So in the enterprise, how many different workflows are there? Like thousands, tens of thousands of different things, right? And especially in marketing, you cannot reduce marketing to one thing, right? You can't replace a marketer with one workflow. You can't, that's just not how it works. Marketing is, it requires all of your brain. It touches every aspect of a business, right? These are really critical functions. So I do not recommend trying to automate marketers out of their roles. I think you have to give them these kind of high leverage systems to go drive the work that they do through the organization. I think that's a different way to frame it for a lot of teams.
Hi, I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur.
I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, marketing researcher, and entrepreneur, and this is Decoding AI for Marketing.
Hey, Rex, what do you, what AI, we haven't talked about this at all. What AI tools are you most into right now? Is there anything that you are really obsessed with?
Yeah, I mean, the tooling's a big issue. I still like to build my own custom or have my team building our own custom tool sets. But things like Notebook LM, of course, were just an amazing thing where you can give it a bunch of context. We gave it 16 different strategic planning documents that different leaders in the company had worked on at Claritas, and we had it generate a 45-minute podcast plus some of the white papers and some of the other industry directions so that everyone in the company could hear where we thought things were going. That was a really cool, nice workflow and tool, but the key to it was, of course, having the context of what we as a company believed and were focused on, as well as some of the key white papers. So, I'm looking at tools that are doing a lot more with context, which is, I think, where today's guest comes in.
Yeah. Listen, I think there's a lot of us are, in fact, Rex, you haven't even seen, we just finished some research with Kantar, trying to understand consumer adoption of the main AI chatbots, whether it be OpenAI or Daria, everybody, what a Claude, everything else is out there. And so we have some sense there's a massive adoption. But at the end of the day, if you use those tools, you start to go, this doesn't really fill in all the gaps for me, and I can't really share stuff unless I tell somebody else about it. So that doesn't really kind of work. So I think there's a big opportunity, as we're going to see today from today's guest, around, is there a layer that sits above those LLMs or independent, however we would do that, we'll let him tell us that can really help enterprises work together to better understand sort of how they really get things done and that are organized in a way that they sort of do stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right. And this is really an important issue. I think the whole idea of context management or content management system for AI, how that works, is really going to be important for companies. And today we have Paul Yacoubian joining us. He's CEO of Copy.ai, which by my understanding is a lot more than just generating copy. It helps us really solve some of those go-to-market pain points and brings context together and helps you manage that in a fairly efficient way. So welcome, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Rex. Greg, it's good to be here.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, yeah. Always risk. Hey, Paul, why don't you just in your own words give background to the listener for what Copy.ai is all about?
Sure. So we started the company in 2020 using the GPT-3 models. And at that time, they were good for generating short form text. And so we applied that to marketing and sales content generation use cases. And at that time, that was really the first application to ever be able to generate net new content and copy for customers. And so we scaled that business up, and in 2023, middle of 2023, we got the GPT-4 models, and that really enabled enterprise-grade automation. So you could then trust the models to follow the instructions, to take in a lot of context, and that really started to help these large enterprise companies solve for that context management problem. And so from there, we've moved the business up market. We are now working with like Fortune 100 companies and helping them scale those kind of best practice customer experiences across millions of their own customers. And so it has been a wild ride. And then in the process of this, you've got ChatGPT coming out, you've got every company turning around and saying, well, what's our AI game plan here? And a big part of the ROI equation for companies is actually mastering that context management. We talk a lot about customer context management, which means it's the customer getting a unified experience end to end across both the marketing and the sales journey. And when they tell us and they give us information, are we taking that into account when we go and message them, whether that's automated messaging or through our own sales organization going and messaging customers? And so every every CMO we talk to, that's what they care about. They want it to be on brand. They want it to be positioned consistently throughout that experience, because that's where the leverage comes from with the messages. And so it's been both a wild ride, very fun and exciting.
Yeah.
Learned a lot along the way, and I think to a large extent everybody's figuring this out at the same time. So there are really no experts in these fields.
Yeah, well, Paul, it's, I mean, just for the listener, they don't know. I mean, I looked in LinkedIn. It at least says you've doubled the size of your employee count in the last 2 years. So you guys are on a tear right now.
That's right.
You took in money from Sequoia and a few other venture capitalists. So
yes,
I mean, listen, Paul, sounds like you're in the heat of the battle.
It's fun. Yeah, we're in the arena. Yeah, but we're here on behalf of customers, right? They're looking to us to help them through this process. And I think when we first started the company, we had to do a little bit of preaching about like the AI transformation. And now we don't have to sell people on that at all. It is just a question of, okay, we see this future state where it's, super, intelligent, highly automated. You have feedback loops all over the place. But today I've got our existing, technology investments, our existing headcount, our existing agency spend, and we have a massive gap between where we are today and where that future state is, and nobody really understands how they're going to go get there. And so what we kind of view our job is to help kind of guide people along that way. Say, hey, don't bite off too much. Don't try to overdo it on a lot of these use cases. Don't overcomplicate things. Let's start and really get those data foundations. That's really key. So what are we trying to actually go do? And then where can we get the most leverage in the actual workflow itself? And that's a big question. I think a lot of people have when they come to us. They're like, hey, we don't know where to start. Where do we start? Do I just give, chat licenses out to everybody? Is that enough? Does that actually solve the efficiency gap problem that we're talking about? And, I was talking to a friend of mine over the weekend, and he's like, well, we have all this AI stuff, obviously productivity is skyrocketing. I looked up Q1 non-farm business productivity growth. It was minus 1.5% in the US.
So somehow America's gone down.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, and you saw
Whoops!
I don't know if you saw the paper that just came out on the coders, but they took 16 coders that were well versed in code base and open source code base. They had 5 years of experience. Their estimate was that AI using Cursor on Claude 3.5 and 3.7 would increase their productivity 20 to 30%, and the productivity actually went down by 19%. And it was, it's a small sample, and we're now on Claude 4.0, so each week you get something more and more advanced. But I think that a lot of them were surprised that their productivity went down. As they looked at it, they're like, yeah, well, I guess you're waiting for the prompt to come back, and you got to fix the code. And if you already know the code really well, it doesn't necessarily make you faster yet. But the belief is that will happen some point in the future. What's your thought about that? That research it sounds like that's sort of what you're seeing here a little bit. And what's the anecdote for it?
Yeah. What is that really happening, Paul? Do you think that's the state that we are right now?
It's possible. If you have pretty senior engineers, they have workflows that make them very hyper productive, and sometimes that the coding, the AI coding workflow helps maybe more amateur or novice programmers get up to speed faster. So you see more of that productivity gain. My guess would be junior level people getting a lot accomplished. But that's it's a great paper. I think it's worth having that, not just conversation, but really more studies around this. I think that's going to be pretty key. And when I look at the aggregate productivity stats, I'm like, we have a lot of work to do. There was another great study by Theory Ventures in the startup world looking at companies that had adopted kind of end user AI chat tools versus ones that took a platform approach, either built their own internal system or invested in a platform system like ours, they saw really no growth, no net revenue growth impact from just AI chat tools. And they saw 19% growth for companies that took a systemic approach to rethinking how their organization's structured. And I think that's pretty much what you would expect. I think in a lot of the workflows that the enterprises care about, they are kind of, because the workflow is so manual and broken today, they paper over it with people. They just throw bodies at the problem. Most of those are just like third-party agency bodies at the problem. They don't really solve the problem. And I think those are the spots where we like to come in and really accelerate what the customer is able to do. Those have very clear ROIs, and it's baked into that use case.
So
And
let's get
yeah,
really specific on that, because I think it'll really help the listener unpack what you see as a problem or the key problem, and how you go about solving it with more of the platform approach. And if you want to use specific anecdotes or
yeah,
specific customers, great. I mean, I think the more tangible you make it, I think they'll be the better for the listener.
yeah. So we'll start with a little systems engineering work, but most process engineering has steps in it that have task time associated with it. And what AI chatbots do really well is they help you accelerate the time it takes to do the task. So if something comes onto your desk for review and it used to take you 5 minutes to flip through the doc, mark it up, and move it on, that might now take you 90 seconds. Great. So that's 2.5 minutes of time savings. But the process from the person that sent it to you to get it all the way back to them might take a week, might have a 7-day turnaround time on that. So when you're looking at the entire process, you did not speed it up, even though you used a chatbot, right? So what you actually want to do is remove that step altogether, codify that review step as an LLM workflow. This is something that we do. And then put that right back to the person that created it so that they can run it themselves. That takes that week out of the process. So
So
the battle is not task time, it's wait time, and that's what makes large companies slow, because they have the most number of those review steps. And so what's really interesting when you look at, you have to use project management software, right? You're just mapping out how slow your company is. Okay.
yeah.
That's what we're mapping out. So take every single process that's flittering between different people in the organization and automate just that one part of it. You will find the maximum amount of time savings there. And where you end up, especially for marketers, is it is a time to market battle. How fast can I go get to market? So when you look at large companies, Microsoft's a great example. We're helping them with translation in their Japanese market. So it's the hardest language to translate. They are delaying product launches because their third-party agencies can't complete the work fast enough. So they're not getting products to market because
Yeah, that's
of
a huge cost to them. I mean, that's
yeah.
That's
days
a
and
big
days of
deal.
revenue, lifetime value.
And
Yeah,
then
that's a great point
and
to
then their
hit on.
translators are doing verbatim translations. So it shows up, it's like broken English in the other language,
Yeah,
right? And then
that's
the
bad.
the local teams are like, I don't even feel confident. Like I feel terrible launching with this kind of content. So you see this in a global context. They've got 40 plus languages that they operate in. That bottleneck can be months in terms of how long does it take to prep all of that work. So you start to just like rattle off the benefits, and the ROI is not really the issue. The issue becomes, okay, they're using these agencies today. Just tactically, how would they shift that over to like an AI platform like us to go do that same work? So that's more of where that time from an adoption and implementation standpoint comes in. But that core economics, it's just so obvious. That's one example. Another example, there's a large financial institution we work with trillions in assets under management, and they produce this market insights and commentary, and it takes 6 weeks to publish it. It's like, okay, this old news, I need to publish it today. So what's the bottleneck? Well, you've got SEO review, legal review, content operations review to tag it up so they can put it in the CMS. And like those are all steps that really take a lot of time. Editorial review, same thing. So you've got one step after the next. And the more, in the old days, to take the quality up, you have to put more people into the process, and it slows it down. And in the AI automation world, you just add another step to the workflow, and you can codify and standardize whatever you want. So adding additional steps that raises the quality of the outputs, that doesn't take time anymore, right? So is this a transformation? 1,000%. This is a huge transformation. The key to those initial, like the initial where do we start thing, is get the quick win. Try to get $1 million plus ROIs that just calculate it ahead of time, and then internally at these companies, everybody's looking for the AI win. So you can land anywhere in the organization. If you deliver $1 million in ROI, I guarantee you the C-suite's going to hear about it, right? Because everybody's like, hey, what did we figure out this month, right? And it goes back up. And then for those companies, the things that you need to, like, the actual processes are so bespoke to every company. That's what makes a company unique, is that you have unique processes. So you can't just buy cookie cutter versions of those processes as point solutions. You actually need a platform you can customize it on. So I've seen a lot of customers go buy like a half dozen things, try to string them together, and it doesn't work, right? Because it's not built for that. So in the enterprise, how many different workflows are there? Like thousands, tens of thousands of different things, right? And especially in marketing, you cannot reduce marketing to one thing, right? You can't replace a marketer with one workflow. You can't. That's just not how it works. Marketing it requires all of your brain. It touches every aspect of a business, right? These are really critical functions. So I do not recommend trying to automate marketers out of their roles. I think you have to give them these kind of high leverage systems to go drive the work that they do through the organization. I think that's a different way to frame it for a lot of teams.
Well, from what you guys said, it sounds like we got to add people according to what Rex's stats were from the research. But Paul, just maybe for the listener, why don't you give them just a kind of rattle off a series of features that are in there, some of which you've kind of mentioned here. So there's process dynamics built in. I think I got it. There's alignment to brand guidelines, I heard as an element. There's translation built into the product. You want to keep going on the list of things that are built in, just so people really start to think about all the copy needs that might exist within a company.
I would say the key. So when we first started the company, we had a list of tools, and those were really best practice prompts that would drive one input and turn the one input into a high quality output. We've since gone into the workflow world and say, hey, look, you can take a workflow process with steps, lots of different steps, and each of those steps can perform an action. You can get very opinionated about what those actions are. So if you have a process step you want to flow through, a lot of these are like, hey, look, we need to go research this keyword, right? So the input to a workflow might be the keyword you want to rank for example. And then the next actions, let's go research that and understand maybe like the search engine results page, right? The SERP on that. That is something that most people want to do, but they don't know how to engineer that into an LLM workflow. And so we pre-build an action layer that is purpose-built for marketers. And so that makes it very easy to just drag that action in and that performs the actions that they want. So a lot of these actions that we bundle into the product are bundling third-party data sources. And so there are a lot of third-party API providers that have different data sets that a lot of marketers will have to like try to figure out, okay, how do I procure that? How do I buy that? How do I bring it in? How do I, pump that into the input to this workflow? We bundle all of that as well. So in the enterprise, now we're talking about more than just an automation platform, but really like a cloud platform for AI. And that means I can come into Copy, I can, get one contract off the ground. Now I can go attack lots of different use cases. I've got all the data that I need between, integrations that connect to my internal systems, the ability to go gather information and research it from websites. And then the third is to go get it from third-party paid providers, which again, we bundle that into the platform. So again, we think about data as the core of this. We've got data coming in. We have our business logic that defines what we do with the data, how we process it, and where it needs to go. And then the last piece of this is really it's data management. So all of that data coming in, we need to store it, right? That is context and
What do you
over.
mean? Hey, Paul, what do you mean
Yeah,
by data, though? I mean, you're not doing numbers here. I'm sorry. Can you just go one
yeah,
more step on that for people?
yeah. So good example. A lot of our customers have some sort of a B2B motion, and they're in sales processes with a number of contacts in an account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the best practices, you need to go research those contacts, you need to go enrich them, you need to go look at their LinkedIn
Okay.
profile, you need to
Okay.
look them up on YouTube or on Google. So what ends up happening at most companies
So
is
this is all in support of a sales flow,
yeah,
then, basically.
yes,
Okay, great. So I can get information about the customer, about the individual, maybe about the sort of company, about their
yes,
buying needs. Maybe am I collecting that information from other people in the company who've dealt with this company within my company
Or
about
maybe it was
beyond?
connected to Salesforce and
yeah, you
what's
can
already in the
connect.
account
Yeah, we
records.
have Salesforce connections, we have
Okay.
call recording platforms like Gong we can connect to, and then you
Okay.
can start to gather all
So I have
this
all this information at my
context.
fingertips is one of the services or one of the elements of the Copy.ai product,
Right.
right? Okay.
And
Exactly.
the big difference is that before that would have been maybe half-assed done by sales executives trying to or getting ready for the sales call. This now makes a workflow where it's consistently high quality, touching everything, and it's happening in minutes, not days or weeks.
That's right. That's right. And it's the best reps that do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So listen. So I heard there was an element of adding an SAO capability to the copy. I heard you matched it back to brand guidelines. So there's tone and so on that can be
Yeah.
done. Is there something that does legal clearance on copy? Are we that far along in the world?
We
Probably not, right?
we have some customers are saying, "Hey, look, our legal teams review it for these 10 things are the things that they
Okay,
look for." And
okay,
so
okay,
the system can just go pre-flag that
okay.
if they've got that. Other customers said, "Hey, we have a historical, dump of all red lines on these things. Can we just
Yep.
take that and use that as an input to go filter net new content through?" So we can do that too.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you're talking about workflow rather than agents. And I'll be interested in your perspective. But
Yeah.
when I did the predictions for 2025, I said this is going to be the year of the workflow, not the year of the agent. The year of the agent will follow, but workflows are far more predictable, controllable. You can have more kind of bite-sized pieces of what the LLM works on within really pretty good guidelines. Like we said, a training set of red
Yeah.
lines. So that it just seems a lot better than trying to leave the wide range of probabilistic outputs you can get from an agent. Talk to me about, because I've heard you haven't used the word agent, you've used the word
I can
workflow again
use
and
it.
again.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell
I
me
can use.
about how you feel about that distinction.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things going on here. One, when our platform's API centric end to end, and so an action in a workflow could be an agent that we want to call on.
Mm-hmm.
So one of those agents could be like a deep research agent or like a web research agent, right? Those are easy ones.
Yep.
An agent, all agents are API native, so you can just tuck it in. And so what your workflow is doing is saying, hey, this is the process we want to follow. And inside of this is the room we're going to give you to be creative about what you're going to go do.
Yep.
Right. So that's an agentic workflow. Is the whole thing an agent? Not really, but it's like the workflow is the guardrails that you're giving that process, right? And the
That's right.
context. So you're managing the context coming in. Now you could have an agent that is a query generator agent, right? So based on all this context flowing in, now what queries should we be running on our internal data set, right? What answers should we generate? That's a that's an agent on its own too. So I don't think that I don't think that differently about it, but it is like there are different tools for different jobs that you want to go do. Some of them are going to be hard coded workflows, some of them are going to be agents, and they need to be able to work together in a way that's easily manageable. I think the until you have all the data sets that are kind of core to that customer messaging problem, and I kind of define all the marketing and sales use cases around customer messaging. Like we need to understand from a data standpoint, all the context about our target market and our customer base. And using all that, we can go message them across any channel or any type of communication. And we want all that to be kind of harmonious and consistent. So that's why we go for our B2B customers broader than just marketing, because they are delivering that message through a sales motion as well. And so it does have to go connect back to that. And so when you look at, okay, now we have the workflow, we got the agents. Again, those are all roughly the same thing. I think Salesforce tries to reposition everything around agents, Agentforce. They're mostly workflows, so I tend to use those a little bit. There's quite a bit of overlap between those right now. I think long term, you could imagine, hey, just give all this data access to an agent and ask the agent to go run with it.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
there'll come a point where you have enough workflows that are stored that you can train another agent to be to look at the process overall and figure out how to optimize it. That's why I think that's probably more of a next year thing than this year, is that if you have really well constructed workflows with discrete agents that are doing specific or more narrower tasks, you have a much better chance of being successful. And then you're creating the training set for the agentic, a more broadly kind of AGI agentic future.
I don't think that's where the gap though is right now. Like the gap is still, how do we onboard our business logic into the workflows right now? That's still the gap. And so until you've done that completely, it's going to take a minute. Then when you want to get to the agentic world, our philosophy around that is you want to use, in marketing we have personas, right? So why do we have personas, Rex?
They're sort of a stand-in for the fact that we can't process all of the context data that's available to us, right?
So what can we do now?
Yeah, I think you're totally right.
We can jettison these intermediary concepts, right? They were forcing functions because we didn't have the capacity to go create unlimited versions of content. You can only do 5, and we only review 5. But from 5 to 20, the juice is not really worth the squeeze. So I would not expect just a huge amount of lift through all these things. Where these companies are now going is like, hey, there's a persona we didn't even realize we had because we could never mine all the data. That's interesting, right? There's a new, we're getting feature requests that our sales team never funneled over to marketing, right? But now with agents, we can like ingest all of the data. We're not missing anything. That's really interesting because now you can take the customer centricity of a conversation, the voice of the customer, literally the voice of the customer, and use the agents to route that context where it needs to go. So that's the exciting thing to me is what is the limit of customer focus and centricity you could have when the customer is literally plugged in as the input to these workflows and these agents can go.
So and completely dynamic, creative, personalized.
Hey Rex, I want to Paul, am I clear here that you're actually suggesting that there could be something that would meet brand guidelines, be within the context of the brand, but be individually targeted to that sales prospect? If we're going that, let's just use it in a B2B.
Yeah, absolutely.
And based on historical perspective, we'd speak in a language or a dynamic or a style that person's going to appreciate. Is Copy.ai that far along?
Yeah,
or is that what you're building towards?
No, you can do that. You can do that right now because you can start to even take your historical sales conversations and start to map out different personas out of that and pull the key features out of that. So an easy one is like your FAQs. So what does this persona typically ask us? You can turn that into content and you can send that to that prospect even ahead of the next call, like ahead of the first call, which is like, hey, this is what people usually ask us. Boom. You took the first call from being an exploratory chat to answering all their questions before they even get on it. You just accelerated your sales cycle at that point.
And this is why the B2B one is a great place to start, right? Because, Greg, to your question, he's not doing this real-time dynamic with 200 millisecond decisioning like when you're delivering an ad. It's you're prepping for a sales call, which you have you have time to do, and then you're sending an email as a follow-up or text or whatever that next touch point is. So I think that it makes a lot of sense while you're starting here. But I think what you're doing will be the way that all of marketing looks like as processes and systems get faster and faster, right?
Yeah, I think
Or do you
so.
think you see a
I think
different
so.
future?
No, I think that it's something that everybody's spiritually been bought into with personalization and great customer experiences. It's really okay. Can we push the limit further now with this new technology? And
Yeah.
the answer to that's clearly yes. And then the question is, well, what needs to change about the way we operate today versus this next phase, right? Let's say you take a platform approach to that. Where do we start? How do we get through that process quickly and then continue to add, more things that compound that experience too? That's the
So,
other.
so Paul, where are you frustrated that you feel like marketers aren't going or businesses aren't going fast enough, and that they should be adopting? Like you're like, we already have the solution, just
Yeah.
use it. Where are they
Yeah. Now
going
that now that
slower?
you know what you got, what do you
Yeah,
think they don't get?
and what do you think is the anecdote to get them to go faster?
Yeah.
How do you make that organizational change happen?
There are a lot of questions. There are a lot of layers to that. The first one, the first one is marketers have been promised transformational technology for decades, and this is why we have 13,000 Martech startups. Okay, so each of those startups they tend to solve for one workflow. That's all they do, and so the looking in the rearview mirror, most marketers and even like sales teams, their bias is best of breed. Let me go buy a lot of things and try to stitch it all together. Okay, so that's the default mode that doesn't work in the age of AI because data is king. Context data is king. And the more context data you have in one place, the better the output gets, the more valuable the output gets. That creates a consolidation, a concentration effect that you want to go drive. And so if you use best of breed and plop that in the AI era, you're not going to get any of those benefits at all. So that's not good. Second thing, the I we see, and that's not the first one is a huge. That's a huge change in buying behavior that's required. Okay, so we're not coming in expecting everybody overnight to get to understand that or get that. That's something that has to be earned by platform companies like us delivering on the value promise and doing it in a way where customers, you know, start to spread that organically. There's word of mouth. So it's not enough to say, oh, we're a platform, don't use 50 other things. It's another to go deliver the value through. So I view that as on us. Second thing, marketers are not systems engineers. So we cannot sell marketers on all the technical depths of all this stuff. They don't get it, right? Marketers are great at understanding customers, buying behaviors, positioning. That's their strength. Their strength is not programming, APIs, prompt engineering at very like big prompt engineering levels. Um, you know, all the technical stuff. That's not the bread and butter, right? That's not what they've gotten paid to do. And so our view is you don't. I There are two different visions out there. One is that every marketer is going to be like an engineer in the future. The other one is that we don't believe in that. The other one we have is the technology companies have to make the value easier to access so that they don't need to become engineers. All right. And so the way we do that is we build the platform and the product to make it easier and easier and easier to adopt those use cases and get the value out. So that's our philosophical alignment. All right, that's three. Let's see here. We got more, right? We got time for more. Four. Okay, people want to go fast, and when you look at process engineering, I get this way more than you might expect. But if we ask them, "What's your bottleneck?" and then we show them how we could solve that bottleneck, I get a lot of questions like, well, won't that just push the bottleneck to the next step? And then they don't want to do it. And I'm like, yeah, you have to keep pushing the bottleneck, and then you have to do it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to Gold Rat and the book The Goal and 40 years of we know how to do operation system management. So you're telling me that people are saying, I don't want to do it because if I fix this problem, I'll then run into some other problem.
I'll have to fix another problem. Right, exactly. Yeah.
I can listen, and again,
I can see why that might be a little frustrating to hear that.
Well, we've not had technology to even solve the first problem in a long time. And so even just understanding that you kind of have to constantly be moving the bottleneck, man, that creates a lot of heartburn. That creates a lot of heartburn because they view it, and it makes sense. If you have too many steps and processes that span too much of the organization, you don't really see a vision necessarily when the whole organization is going to solve each of those bottleneck points.
That's interesting.
Right. Which means
you're saying it just feels too big and vast for a person to even it paralyzes them from getting started.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of companies they have so many processes and steps and teams and orgs and reviews and all that. Even if you solve one team's problem, the next team's just going to block it and slow it down. So they don't actually get that end-to-end speed bump, right? So for us, we need to know that so that we just avoid that use cases that touch too many things because they will not get the speed pickup.
So what are the use cases that you're avoiding? Because it sounds like you've gone into B2B sales, which is a wonderful use case because there's only a couple steps like the research and some of the other things that you have to do call prep. There's only so much stuff. It's very trackable, I guess. Mm-hmm. What are some of the ones that you're like, ooh, I've stayed away from that one because it just feels too intrackable?
There are a lot of like compliance and legal and other things where it becomes like it's not a legal risk that they're willing to accept like an LLM's review on. And a lot of times a lot of times people are just asking, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Because they're trying to like understand what is possible and what isn't. And sometimes the customer or the prospect will anchor on a use case that is not a good fit. Like it's theoretically possible to do the thing that they want to do, but it's not going to drive a lot of business value for them. And so those are the things that we're going to try to steer around or avoid and say, hey, look, this is likely to get bogged down at these later stages. And that's why these like all the content production ones are really no brainers. Anything that's going to go feed, better content at the point of that customer interaction where it's needed. Those are just no brainers for the most part.
Hey, Paul, let me ask you a funny question. This is I'm asking for a friend on this one. Just so, how do you really account for brand voice in these things? I realize it's some very basic level. That's a dumb question because, of course, I can tell ChatGPT or anything else. It's like, give me more formality. Write this at the 6th grade level. But I'm not sure if I really understand how the systems are getting to actual brand voice and keeping that as a part of the system. What does that mean?
It's a great question. So when we ask a lot of customers, hey, can you like send us the document on your brand voice? Most companies don't have it.
Yeah. Do they have? Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Do they even have it? Right. Have they defined that? I'm not even sure if I know what it is.
What about the next best thing of giving it a corpus of here are all of the things that we've sent that we thought were good quality?
Yeah, but Rex, that might not even do it though, because that could be garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, sort of obviously depending on what's happened there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now let's hear Paul's solution.
Yeah.
This is like, the old story, like guy goes into the bait shop and then he gets like this outrageously orange, colorful bait, and he goes to the guy at the cashier and he's like, do fish actually bite this? They actually go for this? And the guy goes, I don't sell the fish. Right? So the brand voice.
Wait. So the point is that the fisherman might like the bright color. We don't know what the hell the fish like. Is that what we're saying? We've targeted our product for the
fisherman? All he has to do is sell it.
This is what people think, right? So when we go to a customer and there's somebody's going to care about brand voice. When you look at it in the wild, like to your point, Rex, you could just look at all the content that's ever been produced. that's just not all going to be in that a singular voice, right? So it's a little bit all over the place. You have a lot of people writing for it. It's hard to define it. So this is a qualitative evaluation fundamentally. There is no quantitative brand voice evaluation. So then we're working with the group that cares the most about the brand voice. And in order for these systems to actually apply a brand voice, you have to like communicate with the LLM system what that is going to look like in a way, not just describing it, because a lot of LLMs, you can describe something and it can't output it in a way that matches that description according to you. So what you actually want to do is output it in a way that is consistent with that, the things that matter to your brand voice. So that requires codifying it. We do it, so we built some meta prompts that break down this linguistically. And so we have two, world-class prompt engineers. One is a PhD in linguistics, the other's a poet. And so LLMs look at words and they have infinite meaning to the LLM because it's been trained on every use of that word ever.
Right.
And a lot of the duplicate content gets pulled out. And so words can have like lots of different context structures. So what we've done is build this intermediate thing. It's baked into our platform that starts to rip out and break out all the different elements of a brand voice. A brand voice is a really kind of unique, interesting use case. So we start there, and then we also ask them for like their best examples of where that brand voice comes out. And then now you can take the intermediate kind of meta prompt layer and you can reverse engineer what makes that great and then output a giant configuration of the brand voice. Okay. So that file you can then reference as, hey, take this into account and then go write this thing up. Right. So an LLM can then say, okay, I understand now what this is and how I need to word the output. And you want to do it in a way, the one of the first iterations was fine tuning models to the brand voice. That's not the best, way to do it because state of the art models are getting better and they're flipping around all the time. Maybe it's OpenAI, maybe it's Claude, maybe it's Gemini.
Right.
So you want an independent kind of brand tone module that you can then reference regardless of what models you're working with.
And then that just becomes context for each of the agents that need to use and write to it then. And you can update it and you can evolve it. So it gives you control over it.
You can update it in one central spot.
Yeah, that's
important. And every workflow that attaches to it now can go get updated. So we have customers that say, hey, we have the legacy website. We're updating our brand voice. We want a much stronger voice in these dimensions. They'll update it, run a few pieces of content to test it, and then they'll go refresh all of their existing content on the new brand voice. Right. And so that's a great use case. And that's a one-timer, but it takes, it can take teams like many, many, many months to go do a full content refresh like that. And that's something they can go execute in a week now.
And it's kind of interesting because, listen, the internal conversation we've been having with the people who really care about AI here at the MMA is around sort of the degree which ChatGPT has become very sycophant, right? It's really too self-congratulatory to me. It's just become really kind of annoying. So you wonder, how do you even keep that out of it? And how do they even program into the thing to say, can you just keep telling Greg what a great job he's doing, which is, not.
They do so they build their models, they do post-processing that takes into account all the attributes of what people like about their historical outputs. And guess what people like? They like being congratulated.
They're doing great.
Right. Yeah.
That must be my 20-year-old kids. I'm from New York. I don't have time for that.
Exactly. So that's another reason, you have the ChatGPT pretty general purpose model. If you're in marketing and you're doing enterprise marketing, you do want something that can remove that slop out of there.
There we go. Yeah. Slop. Yeah. That's a great term.
So as we're coming towards some of the end of our time together, what when you're doing this, you're right now in that workflow model, especially in the B2B part. You've got some other modules doing some pretty exciting things, as you mentioned, with keyword search and different, I'm sure social media workflows and others that are more definable. What's your thought on how you then give a feedback signal to the AI about which content performed better? Like, I imagine you can connect back with a sales call and see which calls advanced, which one's closed for a higher than above average value.
Right.
Yeah. How does that, how's that coming back into your system? Or is that sort of a roadmap thing for it to happen next?
The measurement guy, Paul, wants to know about your measurement, by the way. That's what's going, just so you're clear.
No,
well, that's just how I would think about solving the problem, at least.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. You have to be able to save all that data and then correlate the two. And so that's why we built the data management platform, where we can save all that information and bring it back in. So that to us is really key. I think most companies are so far away from being able to do that. And that's also not a lot of teams, they start like DIY. They want to go try to build their own stuff, bring in, maybe use Chat GPT or just like build a lot of stuff. They can't. Those are the things that you need set up in a real like data warehouse like use case, data platform use case. And I haven't seen anybody else really be able to execute that. Now, what's interesting is in a world of total personalization, 1-to-1, you can't really run sample cohorts on the same output, right? So the way that you want to do it and the way that we run these, is build multiple workflows and then route different people and companies through different workflows, and then compare the results between the workflows. So that's one way to go.
So what do you mean by that? Can you make that a little more tangible? What you mean by
if I'm personalizing a message to you and to Greg, each message is personalized. So I'm not sending the same one like 500 times to get a sample size of a cohort. Yeah. And so what would be
the different workflows that he and I might get?
You might change like the value propositions that are being highlighted. You might change the length of these things. I think what's interesting is a lot of the best practices research that still holds up. Like, people like short messages that are to the point. And so you can still apply a lot of that in there. I think a lot of people still get this wrong because AI is so easy to produce words and tokens and it's chatty. Why is it chatty? Because that's how they make more money. That's why they're chatty. They sell token by token, right?
Oh, I feel like there's a cynical part of the world that they're just being wordy because they get paid for it. Oh my God, that's why
they're getting paid for it.
And on the fixed cost one, they don't want you using thank you because that burns their money on their other end of it.
Exactly.
This is like when Homer Simpson actually had discovered that if he would just type Y or N instead of yes or no, he improved his productivity 50%. That was basically what he said.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. I'm a big fan of just communicating through your input prompts. So when you're like, hey, I need to write an email, just take what you wrote into the input prompts and just send that as your email.
There you go. Okay, Rex, I think you got to take us out.
Okay, well, that's it for this episode of Decoding AI for Marketing. I'm Rex Briggs.
And I'm Greg Stewart.
Be sure to catch all our episodes, plus subscribe, follow, rate, and review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, you can check us out on YouTube. You can get transcripts and more information on our website, decodingaiformarketing.com.
And should you want to learn more about MMA and membership options, please go visit MMAglobal.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Paul.